What's going on, guys? So it's definitely been a while, as usual with my videos on this channel, as we get inundated with crazy amounts of work, and then you know, we kind of go MIA for a bit. But we're back, and the reason we're back is kind of twofold. I think the last video I made was on Luther, the 2002 Silverado that we picked up, and I kind of want to give you guys an update on that. Plus we have another Jeep in here, as you can see, and that Jeep is a little bit interesting. We have to do a frame on it, which is not unusual. Like you can see here, we actually just did one about a week ago, and we haven't even cleaned it up yet. So we've been busy. Now we have this Jeep, and we have a big box right there with all the parts in it. And one of the things why I wanted to film this Jeep is we've got a massive crack in the frame, and the frame is actually bent, and that control arm is ripping off of it. So what we are going to do is we're going to take you along and show you how we fix this one. Now also on this one too, the rear spring buckets are gone, completely gone, rotted out. So we're going to fix those as well. Now what I'm going to do with this one is I wanted to kind of give you guys a full step-by-step on this thing. So I think I'm going to make it 2 videos, and we'll show you what we do to prep these things, what we do to prep the actual frame repair panels, and what we do before we actually start cutting and welding on everything, because I think that's one part that we really haven't gone over in the videos on these Jeep frames, is the beginnings. The unboxing of all the materials, making sure everything's there, and getting everything treated and ready to go. So that's what we're going to do on that one. But first, I'm going to take you guys outside. We're going to give you an update on Luther, because we've been working on him. Again, it's our 2002 Silverado. We've been working on him for the past, I don't know, 2 or 3 days or so, and we got it registered, and we're driving it now and everything else. So I wanted to give you guys an update on what we did and what we're going to be doing. So let's go outside and do that. All right, so I will turn the light on because it is a bit dark. Haha. So first thing we ended up having to do was brakes. Brand new rotors, brand new calipers, new pads, all the way around, because we took it out for a ride and the brakes locked up on us. So that's no bueno. So then we did the fuel lines, which you guys saw in the last video, and now we kind of washed it up a little bit, make it look a little bit better, and we dealt with assessing how bad these rockers and cab corners are, which they're actually pretty gnarly. And then we did a few other odds and ends. We got all the lights working, we got all the headlights working, we got them all adjusted, because this one over here was searching for caves, that one over there was spotting owls. So we got all that fixed up. Got the tires rotated because the rear ones were kind of shot, or the front ones were shot, so we put those in the rear. We got some of the electronics working again. We got this passenger side door fully operational again, so all that's well and good. Now here are the things that we still need to tackle with this truck. We're actually getting new headlights, because you can see how nasty and hazy these are. They're terrible, you can't see anything out of them. Same thing with these lower lights. We got this set right here, just off of Amazon type stuff. And then over here, here's the problem with this. So you open the door and dome light doesn't come on, nothing comes on. That's because the latch is messed up and the switch inside it is bad. So when you close the door, it doesn't actually close all the way, so you really have to slam the door to get it to close. Now another problem is this guy right here for this door is broken. That handle's broken, so we ordered one of those. We ordered a new door latch. We got a couple of interior things, like, you know, steering wheel is kind of messed up, so we're gonna have to take care of that. Headliner's falling down, so we may or may not take care of that. We're kind of in the mode that this is a shop truck, and we're not gonna get crazy with putting a ton of money into it, especially seeing how it's a 2002 with a couple 100,000 miles on it. Not really worth it. So might get like a new gas door. Trains going by, you could probably hear that. But we ordered a bunch of that stuff off of Amazon, just to save money. We're not going crazy with OEM parts. We ended up needing a We ended up needing a blower resistor because the blower only works on 2, 3, and 4. 1 and 5 don't work, so we got to order that. It's all ordered up. It's all coming in tomorrow, and I'm probably going to film all of it just so that you guys have an update on what's going on. We also got our hands on a set of these guys, which are fuel tank straps, and we needed those because one of ours is missing, so we got to do that. But right now, that's the update on the Silverado. It's running good, it's driving good. We got to do some exhaust work on it because it's stupid loud. It's got a big redneck exhaust on it that I can't stand. But we're going to get all of the little mechanicals and the electronics fixed first before we even contemplate doing tires or body work or anything like that. We want to make sure that it's mechanically sound and that it's going to last, because there's no sense in putting a ton of money into something that mechanically is going to fail. So especially if you get, you know, an older vehicle like this and you're worried about it, excuse me, and you want to do a ton of work to fix it, you can do a ton of work and make the thing look absolutely beautiful. But if, you know, 20 miles down the road the motor lets go, then there was no reason to do that stuff in the first place. So we're going to do all of the little things that we can to get it functional mechanically before we do anything else to the truck. And my thought right now is we're going to spend as little money as possible, get as many things functional as possible, and then we'll drive it through the winter. We'll see how it turns out, and then maybe in the summertime, if I feel that it's worth it, we will do the cab corners, the body work, the rockers, the bed. We'll do all that stuff. But for right now, we want to make sure that it's going to be mechanically sound and that it's actually going to be worth putting the time and effort and money into it. So that's where we stand on the Silverado. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to come over here. We're going to open up this big box from Auto Rust and show you our safety caps. We'll lay them all out, and then I'll show you how I treat them all. So I don't know that I've ever featured the full safety cap kit that I use, and I'll put a link in the description to these guys. We're actually an authorized installer for them, which is why we get so many of these things. But just to give you an idea of what they make for these, there's this sheet that basically tells you every portion of the frame that they manufacture, including some of the parts for the tub. And that's for the 97 to 06 Wrangler. Then you have the 87 to 95 YJ. They also make frame repair panels for that. They also do Chevrolet, GMC, Toyota, some Ford stuff. So they have quite a bit. They have quite a bit. It's not just Jeep stuff. They do pretty much everything. But in this kit, we got our 2 frame buckets for the rear, because they're shot. You can actually feel it when you put the thing in gear. The springs start moving around and banging. Then you got the 4 little plates that are going to go up in the front control arm mount, the front lower control arm mount area. That's going to seal up that big crack that we have in the frame as well. And then, of course, your frame rail sections. So these, let me get a light. These have all of the skid plate bolts already in. And they have the upper control arm mount, lower control arm mount, and the sway bar mount, and they come as a full singular piece. So what we're going to do is, when we do these, we coat the inside of them with Rust-Oleum self-etching primer. Now, the self-etching primer will bite directly into the metal and adhere very well. And a little known fact about their primers is that they actually have a rust preventative built into the primer. So you don't have to do anything other than prime these things. And then, of course, yearly maintenance, you know, flushing the frame out and coating the inside of it and everything else if you really want to keep it absolutely pristine on the inside. But what I found is that that Rust-Oleum primer has never, ever failed me when it comes to doing these kits. We prime these things up and they come out absolutely perfect. And even 3, 4, 5 years later, there's still no signs of rust on the interior of the frame, which is amazing. And then it also allows you to coat the inside of the frame with something like Eastwood makes an interior frame coating product that's really good. I've used that before. You can coat the inside with fluid film. You can coat it with whatever you want to coat it with, or just leave it primed and it'll be totally fine. And the reason being is, unlike Jeep, these guys put a massive drain hole right where everything collects. So that drain hole right above the control arm there will stop all these problems from happening. And it's actually what Jeep should have done in the first place. But there's the kit. We're going to paint it now. We're going to get the coats on it. I got the fan ready to blow everything outside so we don't die. And then we'll get the Jeep in the air, and I'll show you what we're going to do with that crack, and then we'll continue the episode tomorrow. Guys, so now we got those coated, and they are coated on the insides. We coated the spring buckets all the way around, and then you'll notice on the outside here we did some spraying. Now these areas here, you actually can't get to those areas when once you put these up in the vehicle, because these are up against the top of the body. So what I like to do is I like to get these primed, and then we'll come back after this primer's dry and we'll shoot a coat of Rust-Oleum flat black on there, just to make sure that we have this area painted and actually coated before we get it up in the truck. Because once we get it up in the truck, we can't access these areas anymore, and we want to make sure that they are coated so that they don't rust out. But as you can see, we just basically did the whole inside of the frame on both sides. And once we've got that dry, we'll get the other black paint on. We'll get some black paint on these two on the tops where you can't reach, and then we'll get them up in the vehicle. But right now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put the Jeep up in the air, and I'm going to show you guys what we're going to do about that crack, which happens to be right about in that area there. And yeah, so let's go. All right guys, so I get a lot of questions, and a lot of questions about these. I'm going to try to answer it with this particular Jeep. One of the big questions is, how do I lift these things and still work on the frame? So it's actually a pretty simple solution I came up with a long time ago. If you leave the vehicle on its wheels, then the weight of the vehicle is actually going to distort the frame. If you lift it up from the control arm mounts, then you're not going to be able to cut the rear one out to actually get the new piece in. And if you lift it by the frame, obviously you can't lift it by the frame, because then you can't replace the frame. So what we've done is actually come up with a solution to that, where I take the lift arm and we put it on the body mount bolt. Now what I found this does is it literally spreads the weight of the frame completely across the frame itself, as well as lifting the body so that the weight of the body is not on the frame. So now we're lifting the frame, which is lifting the body by the body mounts, and we're losing all of the distortion that would normally be there if you lifted this any other way. Now as you can see, this is the section here that I showed you guys earlier where the frame was cracked. That crack is right here, and what I'll do is I'll try to overlay a picture of the crack before I lifted this Jeep up. So now what you can see is that this crack is completely closed, whereas before there was a good 1/4 inch gap there. So this frame has actually reseated itself in its proper position, and the body mount is almost where it needs to be again. So what we're going to do on this one is, once we get the tires off, this is actually overlapped in a little bit, we're going to start measuring up the frame. And usually that just takes a quick couple of measurements from the front and rear bumpers to see where we're at and if we're square, basically. So we're going to do that, and then we're probably going to have to lift this section, the front section of the frame, up a little bit, because right now, I don't know if you can see it all that well, but this section is actually inside of this section. So we are a little bit collapsed further than I'd like to be. So that means that this section of the frame is down too low. So this whole front section here actually was up like this when the Jeep was on the ground, and is now sagging down like this. But this is where we get the advantage. We can actually take the weight of the vehicle, the engine, which is mounted to the frame, the axles are mounted to the frame, and we can generate a pivot point right here. So if your frame breaks in the middle, it's going to break downwards, because the weight of the vehicle is going to snap downwards. When you lift it from here and back there, the front and rear of the vehicle actually put a different counterweight on it, which puts the frame back into general alignment. Now, this is something that is super important, because if you weld these parts in with the frame tweaked, then the vehicle's going to track all sorts of weird, and it's going to do all sorts of, you know, crazy, like, goofy stuff. So now this Jeep, you guys won't be able to really tell from this angle, but this side of the bumper, when the car is on the ground, is actually sitting up, probably 2 to 3 inches higher, and the body, it's noticeable because the body stays straight and the bumper comes up because the frame is moving, and there's no body mounts in the front. There's only one central mount for the radiator support right there. So you'll see it. Right now it looks perfectly straight, but I guarantee you it's about a 1/4 of an inch off. So we're going to take some quick measurements just to make sure. And then probably what we're going to end up doing is welding this crack shut before we go and cut the rest of the frame out, just so that we don't have any more issues with it bending while we're trying to do the actual frame piece. So that's one of the things that, you know, is super important with these. You've got to get these frames straight before you can actually start welding them, because if you weld them crooked, again, you'll have all kinds of problems. Now on this side, this side's not too bad. There is no crack yet, but I am seeing some nastiness up on top of the frame here, which we'll have to deal with. Make sure that we get all that off of there so that doesn't continue. And then in the rear, let me show you guys the rear. I don't know how well you're gonna be able to see down in there, but those spring buckets are all but gone. Oh yeah, there you go. You can see the bump stop's broken right off. The little puck that's supposed to give you the lift in the rear is broken right off, so that one's pretty nasty. And then I think, yeah, that one's better, but it's not great. And I think we also have an issue with either the upper control arm mounts or lower control arm mounts or something, because when you put this sucker in gear, it literally lunges the whole back suspension up. And I think that might be in part due to the fact that these spring buckets are shot and the springs are moving around every time you put it in gear, but I guess we'll find out. Skid plate looks pretty gnarly too. So we're gonna have fun getting this one apart, boys. Alright guys, so that's it for this video. I just wanted to kind of give you guys an update on what's going on with the Silverado, because I know a lot of you guys are interested in the truck stuff. And the fact that we own it, we can kind of do videos on it whenever we want, which is super cool. Makes a nice platform for doing repair style videos and everything else, because these trucks are super popular, and we'll be able to get a lot of really good content on that truck itself. So kind of goes twofold. You know what, we got a truck for nothing. We'll put a little bit of money into it, and hopefully we'll make a little bit of money on it by doing some how-to videos and things like that. I also hope you enjoyed the fact that I showed you exactly what we do on these things to prep them before we actually start welding them into these Jeeps. Now, I know I hadn't gone through that in detail, and I wanted to make sure that you guys got a chance to see exactly what goes on. So if you own a Jeep and you're potentially thinking about bringing it to me, or bringing it to somebody else for that matter, if you live across the country or whatever, you'll know what to look out for. You'll know what needs to be done to make these things reliable and to make these replacement parts last, because the last thing you want to do, weld these things in raw, slap a coat of paint on them and hope for the best, and in the East Coast within a year they're going to be rotted out again. So you need to make sure that you really take care of these things, and I hope that helps you. Now, I also wanted to show you this Jeep, and I hope you enjoyed it, because this thing is a little bit different from what we normally do. Normally we just cut paste and we're done. But this one's got, you know, the bad spring buckets. It's also got the big crack in the frame, and I showed you how I lifted it and everything else. So I hope you guys got a little bit of knowledge off of that. And we're gonna end this video here, because I could ramble on for days about these things. But what I'm gonna do now is I'm gonna start cutting and everything else. So we'll start a new video. That video will be, this one's going up probably tonight, which is Sunday. The next one will probably go up tomorrow afternoon, maybe, or Tuesday, and I'll show you, you know, the rest of the process that we do, and where we cut, why we cut, stuff like that. I'm gonna do a super duper in-depth explanation of what we do on these things. Not so much the actual work, but the explanation of where we cut it, why we cut it, and the things we do. So again, Hope you enjoyed this video. Hit that like button, hit that subscribe button, and I'll catch you guys on the next one. Have a good night, everybody.